Good day. I'm going to talk a little bit today about rules for self control. Rules for self control relate to how you identify how you're feeling and how you control yourself. Now, keep in mind the push for the vast majority of us will be our emotions. This is a description of an allegation that was presented recently. Mother confronted the father after seeing a female at his workplace hug him. The mother punched the father in the face several times, and she was angry. But more importantly, identifying her true emotion, jealousy, because anger is a secondary emotion. But in doing that, the father called the police. The mother left the scene, but she was eventually talked to by law enforcement. And through the investigation, they found that there was a history of aggressive behavior from the mother at home, which in turn put the children in that home in a traumatizing position to see the parental guidance at that house be fighters or loud aggression, arguing, physical contact. All of those things represent a bad presentation to children. So when we talk about rules of control and we look at first self control, the very first thing that you have to look at is self control. How do you control yourself? How do you handle your emotional moments? What does that look like? What does it feel like to others? What's the experience in your home first? Then you can also think about your workplace. Because very often, if you have a snappy attitude, or you're too aggressive, or you talk to a person in a certain tone, that can impact a person, even though it might be to you simple. Always look at how others can feel. Okay, now I know we can't protect everyone's feelings all of the time, but you know when you're out of line. So looking back at self-control and also the rules that relate to self-control, I want you to think about the kids in your home. I want you to think about how you discipline them, you talk to them about their behavior. Then I want you to recognize what they do not know. What is it that what makes kids able to control themselves when adults cannot control themselves? Now remember, you might have that household where you're talking to your children about behavior, and what they see and hear in your home is contrary to what you tell them about. Don't hit your brother, don't hit your sister, don't talk like that, don't curse. But what do they hear? Self-control starts and ends within you. So when we talk about kids, I want you to think about what they see. What do they experience? Why is behavior so difficult? Why is it that we have such a hard time controlling what we say or do? There's many reasons, but one of the things that we'll always talk about first, and aside from a mental health disorder or a mental health issue, you need to look at how you feel inside when something is said, someone does something that you think is improper or something that you dislike. We did a session previously on problem perception, and that's just thinking about in your head is something going on wrong. But remember, it only exists in your head as something wrong because the person who is doing what they think they need to do, want to do, choose to do as an adult, it's okay. So, going back to self-control, why is problems or behavior such a big problem or so difficult to deal with? Because we don't have the forethought of thinking. When we choose to do something, we don't put enough thought into how why did I choose that? Recently, some associates, we were on a golf course, and someone made a comment about another person, and my first word was, why did you feel that way? He made another comment, but the comment was so fast that he had not time to think. He simply said it. So when I talk to you about thinking, if you can hold back and think for a moment, your comment can be way more successful from the perspective of not hurting first and also getting your true feeling or point across. What are your self-control issues? What are your shared control issues? And what is submission to external control? First, I talk about self-control because it's a key, but I've already given you some insight that that is the key thing for every one of us, for your kids, for your partner and your family, all of those things. Shared control. What do you think that would mean? In most relationships, there's 2, 3, 4 people, multiples, husband, wife, then you have kids. Shared control versus she, he, or someone being dominant in that relationship and always trying to be in control. Decision making should be a shared opportunity for each individual, and or if one person has the best comments traditionally, then talk about it so that others feel a certain way. Sometimes we give the influence to someone who we figure has the best opportunity to make a good decision. Their history is good for the family. How they deal with things is in a controlled way or not hurting. So it's shared control has got to be looked at and understood. If I tell my mate what to do all the time and I talk to her and my kids in a certain manner, do you think they're going to be comfortable with me? No, they're not. External control. External control represents any type of agency from law enforcement, judicial, child protective services that has to enter into your family, your home, your relationship to try to get things to be better. I have talked about fear. Now, fear is very, very important to understand in the world of domestic relationships. No one deserves to live in fear. I can repeat this probably in every session because it's so important. No one deserves to live in fear. Men often talk about how women get away with so much today. When they talk about behavior, if a man is asked, "Are you afraid of her?" probably 99% of the time, he's going to say no. If there is no fear, then the response to how you handle behavior is vastly different. Because now you simply want to address that incident as opposed to a historical perspective and a future perspective of just emotions. When I talk about the fear and also self-control, how do you talk? Do you posture? Do you stand up and give that glare as you can do something to a person? Do you ball your fist up? Do you just curse? Because remember, in the world of domestic violence, you do not have to strike a person. You simply have to be in a controlled a controlled position with that person feeling as though you can or will do something to them. That is the position of fear. Going back into rules of control, I want us to think about how you handle your hardest moment. How do you handle your hardest moment? What's most difficult for you? Is it dealing with the kids that's the most difficult, that cause you the most stress, to raise your emotional levels? Is it your significant other? Things that she or he might do that causes you to feel really challenged emotionally. And when it comes time for that conversation or, something needs to be said, you feel a certain way. You get upset. And when you get upset, the response that you give might not be appropriate. The response that you give does not bring success. The response is not listened to. And when we fail to respond or talk or present in a certain manner, very often we're not heard because the other person is only hearing and dealing with the ugliness in that presentation. So when we look at control, though, you have to think about what bothers you. A lot of us never think about how we feel during the course of a day. If you had a hard day at work and you come home, what is your challenge? Because the home is not the way you want it. The food is not prepared. The kids are in disarray. The house isn't clean. There's a lot of things that can bother us and cause us to feel a certain way. When we feel a certain way, too many times we react or respond inappropriately. Can someone make or cause you to lose your self-control? Can someone, in effect, push that imaginary button, that actually does not exist, but for you, whenever she or he or they, the kids, someone says or does something that you dislike and you know that they know you don't like it, but yet and still they still do it. Now, how do you respond? Are you angry? Are you hollering? Are you in someone's face? Are you actually being physical? Remember, you cannot cause fear in your home. That's the worst thing for you to do. Sit down and talk about how you're feeling and what needs to change so that those feelings does not continue to manifest in you. You have to look at your presentation and the success of that presentation. Often I hear in group, we were arguing and we hollered because she or he wasn't listening. I pinpoint the spoken word can be heard if it's spoken. To holler and argue or to scream at someone to be heard is a very ridiculous comment, because you do not go to your workplace, you do not go out in the community and holler and scream to be heard. No one will respond appropriately when you holler and scream, okay? So again, thinking about all of the things that can cause you to lose control. What does your self-control look like? What does your shared control look like in your home? These things are very, very important, because remember, the impression that you give to your kids are the impression that helps determine their success in life. My last question. Do you view your family as a family that has value to you? Now keep in mind, when I say the family that has value to you, when you are upset with your mate, or that relationship is starting to come apart, but you're still in the home, how are you dealing with people? Is there value? And I have heard this numerous times from men and women. I love my kids, but I don't care about her. I don't care what happens. And I try to get them to think about the attitude of I love my kids, but I don't care about her, can cause significant issues within the context of that home, because you don't care enough to recognize her feelings. She doesn't recognize your feelings. And what you guys are presenting is ugliness for the kids. So the kids are experiencing all of these things which make them feel as though they have no value. They're not important in that relationship. They're not important in that home. And when I say that, I want you to think about how many kids run away from home because the home is so bad that they feel better in the street, in someone else's home, even if it's a place that could bring more risk, more damage, more issues to their health. Those are things that they'll choose because the consistency of ugly behavior between a mom and a dad can be very, very bad. When I speak of value, what is the value? Does your family have value to you at home? If they have value, do you recognize it? Do you put them in the position that you mean so much to me that I will not hurt you? And not hurting a person is not a difficult task. Watch your mouth, watch your hands, even can be concerned about how you look at a person, how you respond. All those things are key. So please think about it and take care and have a great day.